Of all the strange creatures that are celebrated Halloween, one of the weirdest, of course, is the vampire. Of course, it's generally held that the vampire is a myth, but in every culture in the world since the beginning of time, even in ancient Greece, in Africa, in this country, in Europe, there are legends of the vampire. In fact, the great philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau believed that the vampire was an actual being. He said if there's anything that's fact, it's the vampire. In fact, people in the Middle Ages and later on up into the 1800s were so nervous about vampires and their relatives died, they'd actually sever the heads of the corpses and put them at the corpse's foot so it couldn't reassemble and become a vampire. So it's in some parts of the world, it's still considered a fact. In movies, in literature, and folk tales, the vampire is presented as this lone being that's fighting against God and man, and is always uphill fighting but can never win, and is a fiend that's addicted to blood. There are a lot of vampire movies, but here are 11 of my favorite ones. Nosferatu, the classic F.W. Murnau film, which is the original black and white silent vampire film, very much still watchable, an excellent film. The 1931 Dracula, starring Bela Lugosi, which really launched Bela Lugosi's career. What would Halloween be without this particular film? The 1964 film The Last Man on Earth, starring the always watchable Vincent Price, as a fellow who's the last human being on Earth. An epidemic has caused the whole world to become vampires, and he's fighting them all. This movie was written by Richard Matheson, the classic horror sci-fi writer, and it really is the precursor to The Night of the Living Dead. Another one of my favorites is the movie Rabid, starring Marilyn Chambers and directed by the great, very strange director David Cronenberg, about a woman who has plastic surgery and she gets a strange lesion on under her arm, and it wants to suck blood. Another one is Fright Night. Fright Night was made in 1985, and Fright Night is the story of a nice neighborhood where some people move in next door, two guys, and lo and behold, they're vampires. And the boy next door discovers they're vampires, and he goes about trying to tell everybody they're a vampire. No one believes him, and he goes after a quest to kill the vampire. Made in 1987 is the movie The Lost Boys, which is now, of course, considered a classic. It's the first time the two Coreys work together, Haim and Feldman. It's about a mother who moves to a California town, a small California town, with her boys, and they get in with a group of other boys. They find out it's a gang of vampires. It's now, considered a movie that if you watch vampire films, you have to watch this movie. Near Dark, a very good film about a gang of vampires that travel around the countryside in a van with tinfoil in the windows because if the light gets through, it burns their skins. And inside the van with the vampire gang is a new vampire. He's a reluctant vampire, and he's trying to fight off the idea that he might have to suck someone's blood. A very, very interesting film is Vampire's Kiss, which stars Nicolas Cage as a yuppie vampire who's very, very nervous about being a vampire, doesn't know what to do about it. But I think the film really is about several things. It's a psychological look at vampirism, but it's also about our modern addiction to materialism. Another very good film that deals with vampires is the movie Kronos, which is a film that focuses on a small metal creature that finds its way into a antique shop, bites the owner, and then it goes on a rampage sucking people's blood. Another very interesting film is The Addiction, which has two great performances by Lily Taylor and Christopher Walken. And this movie is really, and the title is an apt title, The Addiction. Although it's about vampires addicted to blood and needing blood, it's really a good look at drug addiction. And finally is the movie Blade, the most recent on my list, made in the late 1990s, starring Wesley Snipes as a half-human, half-vampire who's trying to stop a vampire apocalypse. Very violent but interesting film. Obviously vampires are special. Of all the movie genres, there's more vampire movies than ever. And I think this is true because the vampire really reflects how modern people are. We're people without direction. We no longer seem to be able to know the difference between right and wrong. And so we're always shape-shifting and trying to decide who we are. And it's said that the vampire casts no reflection in the mirror. And maybe he doesn't have to, because when we look in the vampire's eyes, it's us that we're looking at.